Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I'm the founder of Perfect Legal Video. And I am very excited to have with us today Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family and real estate law firm out in Worcester, and she's just amazing. She comes on here every week, and we have such a great time talking about all of these different family law and real estate law topics. Today, we're going to be talking about how to break your impending breakup or separation to your child or children. And with that, I want to welcome you to the show today. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you for having me. And again, I hope that this is going to be helpful for somebody.
I think it is because look, I went through a divorce, and I know that one of the toughest parts of it was to sit down with my 5-year-old at the time and tell her that things were going to be very different in our living situation and in our family. And I know that there's plenty of mistakes that people make, and it could actually affect the child in the future and how everything goes in the near future with your divorce. So really, it's important to know the best ways to do this and some of the biggest mistakes that we're going to avoid. So, I mean, let's start off with the mistakes, because those are really crucial, and there's plenty of those. What are some of the mistakes people make when it comes to breaking this to their children?
I think the biggest mistake is going to be the most obvious, which is your father's a piece of crap. Great. Let's not say that. I don't want to state the obvious, but guys, people do say this stuff. Stop projecting your feelings and your beliefs on your children. You need to remain neutral with the children. You need to know that this person still loves mommy and daddy, will always love mommy and daddy. So the moment you start making negative comments, that's going to be absolutely detrimental. So you want to stay away from those words. I get that you're emotional. I get that you're, can't even focus on what you need to because you just have so much animosity or hatred for this person. But at the end of the day, that child loves that person, and you saying negative things are going to hurt them. So that's always the first and foremost is, look at your audience, and your audience is this, 5 to 10-year-old kid, whatever it is. Regardless, they still love this parent, and they will always love this parent, and that's what you need to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a term for that. And I'll let you tell the folks what it is, but there is a term for saying negative things, trying to change your child's mind about your spouse or your partner.
Yeah, and I think, again, it depends on how severe it is. It could just be a one-time thing, but again, the more you do it and the more they listen to it, it creates that parental alienation. It creates that hostility, that rift between you and a child. And that's going to create a problem, because at the end of the day, if the judge really thinks that you are doing something to hurt that relationship with that parent, you may ultimately lose custody. So yes, parental alienation is a big thing. Yes, it is real. And yes, the judges do take it seriously.
Yeah, they take it very seriously, to the point where you may or may not get the custody and the child support that you normally would if you were acting normally and trying to make this as easy on everyone as possible.
Absolutely. I think, again, niceness goes a long way. I get that you don't like this person, but you did have sex with them. You did have a kid with them. The end of the day is, guess what? That matters. That's something that the court's going to look and go, wait a minute, you decide. And oh, by the way, you had 9 months to think about it, and you still had this child. Didn't put up the child for adopted, decided to raise the child. So guess what? Suck it up and learn how to be an adult. And that's really kind of the hard lesson that the court will teach you, because it really has to be that standard. You did all this stuff, you created this problem, and this child should not be put in the middle of any of your craziness.
They had sex with them? Jesus. I know. I'm shocked. No, it's true. It is crazy how far relationships come from that beginning, and end up at the end of the road, and you're like, wow, how did we even get here sometimes? So I get that, I think that treating people with respect is really important, and it's a really important lesson to teach children. Because what do you think the child is going to do if all they do is hear you cut somebody down that was a big part of their lives, and that you were in love with, and enough to have a child, and sometimes have longer marriages, and the rest of it?
Absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to just civility is great. I get that you don't like it. We don't get to walk into our offices at work and badmouth somebody and then think we're going to keep our job. It's the exact same thing. You want to badmouth your ex, you think you're going to keep your child? Not necessarily so. So again, you have to sort of treat it as a business, sort of treat it as an employment thing. But again, you have to look at it and go, what am I doing to my kid? Do I love my kid? Yes. So stop acting stupid and realize that this child needs this person in their lives. There's so many times that you hear stepchildren or step parents that are saying, oh my God, I love my stepmom, I love my stepdad. We all should be that way. We should all want our children to not only love that parent, but love their entire family. And whether that family grows or not, that's who they should be involved with. And again, we need to treat each and every one of them with civility. You don't have to say, I love them, but being civil and being polite, it goes a long way. And again, like you just said, it's teaching your children to follow in the same footsteps, to not hold that hostility, to not want to go and shoot up a school, to realize that, this is big picture. These are the things this is where this is coming from. You hear about these people that are going on rampages. Why? Because they're pissed off about something. Why? Because they weren't actually taught growing up that this is the proper way to do things. And I get that there's other things, but guess what? That's the first and foremost, is they're going to look at you and go, well, did you raise the child right? And if you raise the child right, then again, they're not going to have that hostility with the other parent, and they're not going to have the hostility with the other family members. And then they will come to love all of the step family members and the stepmothers and the step siblings and whatever else may be.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you. So as far as how you physically break the news to the child or children, if you get along well with your soon-to-be ex, is it better to do it when you're together, or should you have separate conversations with the children?
I think it all depends on the age of the children and whether or not the children have some anticipated knowledge that it might be coming down the pike. If they see you fighting, if they see you not getting along, if they see you not spending time together, they probably already have some kind of inkling of what's going to happen. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, everybody knows somebody and somebody else and somebody else that has a divorced family. So it's not taboo. It's not something that we can go, hey, this is an issue. They actually are probably going to be relieved if they've kind of seen this progressing this way. Again, the younger children, you're going to obviously have to do a little bit more hand holding. But realistically, I would say anytime you can sit down with your ex and have that conversation with your child or your children is huge, because what that sets up is a united front. What questions do you have of mommy? What questions do you have of daddy? This is what we want to do in terms of where you're going to be living. This is how we're going to divide our time. They see that. And again, they also see that, hey, these two people that may or may not like each other anymore can still be civil. And again, that's going to carry a lot of weight. So ideally, yes, it should be joint. If we can't do a joint, then again, my suggestion is going to be talk to a guidance counselor, talk to a family therapist that you've been going to, talk to somebody that has some kind of guidance that they can kind of help you. And then realistically, both parents should be listening to that advisor and then taking that advice. So how do I approach the subject? What do I say? What don't I say? those are things that, again, a therapist or a guidance counselor is going to know your particular family or your child, and is going to be able to give you the best advice. Obviously, the younger the child is, the more generic you're going to be, and they might not even care because, 3-year-old, what do they know what marriage is? Mommy and daddy live together. You're going to tell them divorce, and they're going to go, great. I have no idea what that means. But again, you need to set the tone based off of their age, based off of what they've seen. And sometimes, it's a good thing. If there's a domestic violence, then obviously you shouldn't be doing it together. But you also need to let that other parent know in some fashion that, hey, I'm going to tell Susie that we're getting divorced and we're going to be living separate and apart. So that, when Susie goes over to the other parent's house, she's not going, hey, mommy, why don't you love me anymore? We don't want that either. So again, there has to be some level of communication in some fashion. But again, go to those professionals, use them. And then most importantly, after you're telling them this, say, hey, I'm just letting you know that I did make that conversation. I did have that with my child. Mom and dad have that conversation. So can you let us know if you see anything, if you see any issues, if she or he has voiced any concerns that we didn't address, so that we can address those issues, whether it be in a professional environment or not. But that's why you're relying on those professionals to reach out to you and go, yeah, I think Susie's having a problem. Because yeah, you can understand, oh, now child's bedwetting all of a sudden. Great, we know where that's coming from. They don't know how to do, to control things, or they're restricting their food because, again, those are things that children can do. And it's the only thing that they can control. So that's how they do those things. But again, is it something different? Like, hey, Susie's coming to school and she's hitting the kids on a daily basis. Again, that's something that you're not going to necessarily see because you're not in that environment. So that's why, again, if you have those other professionals that you're talking to and you're explaining the situation, they will give you feedback saying, this is why this is happening, this is how we need to address it.
And that makes a lot of sense. It's nice if you can sit down together and have that conversation, and at least have that communication if you're not going to do it that way, and if for some reason you can't communicate without going into a rage. And I know it's there's so many different situations with divorce. It's amazing that you can even do this job, because there's just a lot of different variations on what can happen. And even the friendliest divorce it can turn into something contemptuous out of nowhere. And it could even start with something like this. How do we break it to the children? And whatever fault the other person thinks that you have in the situation comes out while you're telling them. And it's really hard to be evenly keeled sometimes, especially when it's as fresh as it probably would be if you're at that point in the divorce where you're just telling the children and people are starting to live in separate residences.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's we all like to sling mud. Great. And we all know how to push the other person's buttons. But what is it going to really accomplish? And, again, it goes back to, who are we concerned about? Because I know you're hurting. I get it. But at the end of the day, do you want your child to suffer the pain that you're feeling right now? No. So you need to be what you are, which is the parent, and you need to go, I need to put my child first. I'll put on my good smiley face, look at me, and then do it. And then, you know what? Then you go off and you take your time alone and you vent and you do what you need to do outside of the home, outside of that situation. Because I get it's stressful, but time and place. And you really need to put on that happy face for your children, because they need to understand that things are going to change, but you know what? We don't love you any less. We're going to be happy. The end of the day is, guess what? That's what a lot of divorces and a lot of separations actually do. They make people happy again. Because when you're at that point, you're at your lowest point, you're miserable, your kids know it, they feel it, contrary to what you think, they're feeling it. So when you all of a sudden go, oh, I'm dating again, I have a new experience, and I go out with my friends that I wasn't able to do before, those are things that the kids are going to look at and go, hey, mommy's happy, daddy's happy. And then they're going to realize that this divorce or this separation isn't the end of the world. And that's what your job is as a parent, to make sure that they understand that we still love you no matter what. It just means that we're in different households.
Absolutely. So what other recommendations would you have when it comes to breaking it to the children? And what have you seen go wrong and what have you seen go right? Because I know you have a lot of experience with this, and we both know that your clients tell you everything.
I think the biggest advice is, again, have that backup system. We constantly preach to our children, if anyone's hurting you, if anyone's touching you in a different way or inappropriate, tell somebody, tell the police, tell the doctors, tell the schools, tell your aunts, tell your uncles. It's the same thing. You're giving that exact same advice because you know what? Maybe they don't want to talk to mommy because mommy just said bad things and said mommy and daddy aren't living together. But, my uncle that I really get along with and we play with, I can go and tell him. So you want to give that outlet, that same outlet to that child. Give them all those resources. Let them know that everybody is here. If they have any issues or any concerns, they all are still there to love you. They are all still there to listen to you. They are all there to take care of you. And again, go through the schools, go through all those things, talk to them. Realistically, look at your child, see what their demeanor's changing, see if something is not quite right. And maybe you can't put a finger on it. It's just, I don't know. Like, she's not as happy, but she's happy. She's smiling, but you have that instinct. So use that instinct. So again, maybe we have to deal with it. Is it a psychological issue? Is it something that we need to get counseling? Is it that she's just trying to process what is happening? So use the remedies and the resources that are out there. So there's always therapists, there's always guidance counselors, there's always family members. See if that dynamic changes where, we're not really having a good time, something's going on. Maybe we should take them over to their cousin's house and see how they interact with them. If the same behavior, then again, it's something that's really weighing on the child. Again, you want to look at it and go, what can we do? What counseling can this child get? And again, be open to go, hey, what's bothering you, Susie? What's going on? Have a conversation, sit down and go, hey, you can talk to me about anything. And I think that's the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you're never closing that door on that communication. That's huge because again, they're going to go toward what they know, that restrictive behavior, that I'm going to be able to control something in my life. By golly, something is going to work. You want to get out of that situation. You want to make sure that they know that they have all those other avenues, that they don't have to be in that situation. So I think that's the biggest thing you can do is, again, look, pay attention. It's not about you. It's about what's going on in their lives just as much. So really focus on what it is and how they've changed and what you kind of need to do for them. But generally speaking, love. That's the answer. You have to love them. You have to listen to them. You have to love them. You do that, you're going to be fine. Your children are going to be fine. You're going to get through the separation fine. And there's not going to be a lot of resentment with the children as they grow older. So I think that's kind of the best thing that you can do for them. Now, again, the opposite end of that is you didn't follow any of those directions. You acted like a jackass. And at the end of the day, guess what? You sit there and become that parent where you're getting married as that child that separated or divorced family, and you have to pick, does mom come to the wedding or does dad? No child should have to make that decision, but you've put that child in that position because of everything that you've done throughout your relationship and throughout your separation. So just something to be aware of that, there are cases where, yes, if you're abused, I get it. But short of, the domestic violence issues, you really need to make sure that this child knows that both parents love them and both parents are going to take care of them.
I think that is sage advice. And, we really appreciate your coming on here and discussing this. And I do hope that this helps some of our viewers understand what happens when you are telling your children and some of the pitfalls that you can avoid, trying to make it as positive of an experience as you can. Because as Nicole mentioned, most of the time people are happier after. It's like removing a rotten tooth.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to they're going to mimic what you're doing. If you're that miserable person and you're that angry person, that's what they're going to end up being. And that's not what anyone wants for our kids.
No, that is not. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. I want to thank all the viewers for watching. And I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And we will talk to you soon.